All right, I'm recording on this too.
Push button.
Ooh, all right.
All right, Sean.
Rich,
so, like I said, I'm not feeling all that great. So,
Yeah.
but as a bonus, you and the audience get the pleasure of my sick voice, which I've done before on the show. Yeah. But I feel like I've I'm not gonna lie. I feel like when I have a cold or something, and we do a show, then I sound better.
It's very like, documentary voice.
Yeah. It's very Ken Burns.
Bust into and then the penguin thought it would swim to safety, but it didn't because the killer whale bit its fucking head off.
The ant searched precariously. he dangled precariously on the ledge, searching for food, searching for home, searching
it's always
for himself.
I get the sentiment, but the only problem is with all those nature videos like that. Like he's searching for home, but he can't because of fucking global warming. I mean, you're watching this, you fucking asshole. You're using electricity. Like I am. I'm sorry, but I want to know what happens to the penguin.
I don't know. It's not like. I mean, let's be real. Global warming's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's Jeff Bezos' fault.
That's true. He sent the penis rocket.
Yeah.
That's what
I guarantee that he has contributed more to the he's contributed far more to the greenhouse effect than I have driving my 4-cylinder car to work.
It's true.
So why don't you go bother him first? And then if there's still a problem, then you can come find me.
That's a good point. You tier it. You start there and you work your way down.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
If you'd be like, hey, we figured we could knock a full degree off of the temperature if you stop driving your car. You're like, oh, okay, cool. I'll do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're going to come to you like, hey, 1 billionth. Like, we don't even have we don't have the number after the 1. If you stop driving, we'll fix stuff. Like, then why you bother me?
It's like, okay, how about Amazon commits to, being... Let's say Amazon reduces their, pollution and output and this, that, and the other, and then I'll buy a Prius.
If we're being honest,
if we're still a problem at that point, I'll buy a Prius.
If we're being honest, it's not in the scheme of the world, Bezos is not really the big problem. You know who it is, Richard?
Who is it?
Edit it out.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. So I've learned, Richard, we're going to get into this. I do a pretty good Trump voice, but I always hate to do it because, it's always, iffy if people are going to get, aggressive about it. And so whenever I want to talk about, edit it out. I think
the only way you do that voice is aggressive, right? I've never heard the man talk calm.
It's always kind of like he has a passive calm, where he's like, you're not the worst ever, but you're pretty much horrible.
That's not calm. You're not as bad passive aggressive. That's not even passive aggressive. That's
it's passive aggressive. But whenever, because you're going back to what we're saying, it's, I think they said China, edit it out, is the one that is contributing the most in terms of pollution and stuff. I think the United States has actually done pretty well last 10 years if you're looking at the emissions.
Well, I think that we need to stop looking at it by country and we need to start looking at it in terms of corporation and industry. Because if, let's say hypothetically, China's okay, everybody that builds a factory here has to abide by X rule and X regulation. Then they just pick up that factory and go someplace else where they don't have to, where it's more cost effective.
Yeah, potentially. But how am I going to get all my cheap stuff? It's one of those
instances where the UN could actually, be useful to a degree But
yeah, they could send in their army and tell people what to do.
Well, not necessarily their army, but they get,
this is for Mother Nature.
It's a place where everybody gets together and comes up with ideas. So while they're there, they could be like, "Hey, you have X person has a factory in your country, and they have one in my country. Let's work together." And
yeah. But I mean, if you want to get into like really bad politics, like on the UN's like humanitarian like council, like Human Rights Council, there's some countries that shouldn't be on there, if we're being honest.
I mean, should we be on there, to be honest?
I mean, we're not throwing certain types of people off roofs.
That's true.
So
anymore.
There is that. I don't know if the government per se was. Like, it wasn't like, it's never like been socially accepted like in the last 100 years. Maybe. No, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we did, but
I didn't.
Well, you didn't. Not you personally. I mean, you didn't, right?
I haven't.
Okay. I'm glad.
I've thought about it. Like when I'm up there. And it's not really like I want to throw somebody. I'm like, man, let's test the simulation theory out. Whee! It's me jumping is what that is. All right. Well, in 8 minutes, we solved all the world's problems, Richard.
I know. And I'm not 100%. So, I mean.
Yeah.
What's everybody else's excuse? That's my question.
75% Richard solved the world's problem. 100% Richard, the universe's problems.
Yeah, right? Oh, my God. I could fix so much. And, like, I guarantee that at least 30% of the country would hate me. I think I could fix. I think I could I would institute a bunch of changes, and then 30% of the country, I feel like no matter what, 30% of the country is going to hate you.
Yeah, I don't like. What's the highest like approval rating ever?
Because 30%, you can get 30% of the country to believe anything. There's 30% of the country that thinks that JFK Jr. is going to come back from the dead. So
I don't think it's 30%, but there's probably way more people than should be. Like 1% is way more than that.
Yeah. A non-zero number is bad.
Yeah. Like lizard people, like those are like, okay, like maybe you've got some leg to stand on, but JFK Jr., I saw the news show on that. Like his plane went down. Although I got a new idea for a show, not really about JFK Jr. coming back because I don't think he is, but it was like celebrity conspiracy
You know what
theories.
I think would be cool if we did a show where we like called crazy conspiracy theories, and then we acted like we believe them, and then started putting big deep predictions on it.
Well, you have to be careful about that.
JFK Jr. is going to come back on Thanksgiving night. You
have to be careful with that, though.
And so then the next episode would be us trying to like rationalize why that didn't happen. Be like, well, I saw an email that said that
we didn't say this Thanksgiving.
But there was a snowstorm in Fairbanks, Alaska, and he couldn't get out. So he put the return on hold. And then you just keep going with it. Be like,
well, I was going to say, you have to be careful.
People are going to reveal themselves on July 4th. And then at July 4th happens, then the next week you just come up with some bullshit excuse why it didn't happen.
I was going to say, you have to be careful because then you might start believing it. Or if you're really, really good at it, you build a religion like, edit it out. I like that we're doing kind of like what we do like for an hour beforehand when we haven't talked for a while. I like this. Because the other thing, I finished Jaws on audiobook, which was really good. And I'm listening to 1984 right now, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if you've ever read it or not.
I love Van Halen.
Yeah. You just got to jump, or Panama, or all that other stuff.
Panama was on 1984.
Yeah, that was a good song. I didn't understand it, and I was in class one day, and they're like, the Panama Canal, and I was like, ha! I've heard that song. Can't believe they named the canal after that song.
I know, right?
History's weird. All right, you want to pitch some movies?
Yeah, I have one really good one that kind of branches off into other ones, but then I have one that's kind of I'm not sure about.
You're building a board game universe, the BGU.
Yeah, I kind of am.
I love it.
All right, we're going to do this. I'm going to start the show now. What's up, everybody? I'm Richard.
And I'm edited out. Shawn.
And we're speaking the language of bromance. And today, Shawn, today you wanted to do a movie pitch, but you had an interesting take on a movie pitch that really got me thinking. I kind of like this. And so I was thinking about it. And like I said, I think I said it in the cold open. I have one, I think, really good idea that could be different things, but then I have another one I'm not 100% on.
Yeah, so I saw back on Facebook that it was after I got into some group and they're like, JFK Jr. is coming back. I'm like, scroll. No, it was somebody did night. Somebody had done movie posters for like horror themes for board games. So it was like chutes and ladders. And it was like you go down a chute, you go into a bunch of blades. I was like, oh my God, that'd be a cool like movie pitch idea. And I was like, we should do that around Halloween, but Halloween passed us. We couldn't fit it in. But I was like, well, why not do it for other genres? And that's why we came up with board games as a comedy movie pitch.
Yes.
So I got a couple of good ideas. I'm sure I'm basically going to do this as like, here's the comedy version. And then in the future, whenever we do the horror version, it'll be these exact same board games. I'll be like, but here's the horror movie version of it. And then we'll do the horror version, which will be even better. But that's the rated R version. Maybe NC-17, but that's a later topic.
So my idea, I feel like you could do it in all different kinds of genres. But
okay,
I digress. I do have a comedy version.
All right, well, let's start with you then, because you seem really, really excited.
I am. Okay, ready? Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Shawn, do you remember the movie? Do you remember the movie Wagons East?
I don't think I've ever seen it.
I think it was John Candy's last movie. So it was
that's kind of weird because Chris Farley's last movie was like a pioneer movie. Was it like a?
So this was like settlers going out. This was like a like settlers going out west and everything or whatever, and then they decide they're going to turn around. So they're like Wagons East.
Did it come out after he died?
Yes, I think it did come out after he died. Oh. I think he died like while the film was being wrapped up.
You want to talk about like weird conspiracy theories? Like, so John Candy's movie Wagons East, he died before he came out, right? Chris Farley's last movie,
Almost Heroes.
Almost Heroes was a pioneer movie that came out after he died.
So, okay. So what I'm thinking is you do a screwball-y kind of comedy, and you have just a bunch of wacky ass fucking characters, and you set it in Settlers of Catan.
Yeah. So I've only played that game a couple times. I really like this idea. So sell me on this. What's the pitch?
Okay, so the pitch is you have a group of people that are going out into the world to build a new settlement. And then like you could do it like a Mel Brooksy kind of movie where it's just basically like things just seem like things are taken like too literally.
Okay.
So you have like they're building roads, and we'll see who's gonna declare whose road is whose, and you could have like wacky shenanigans going on when it comes to building the roads or building a city. And then there's the robber in the game who gets randomly placed places, who sneaks around and steals your resources.
Ooh, who plays your robber?
Ooh, that's a good question. Who does play the robber?
I was gonna say if you're setting it like somebody like fairly big-ish now, the SNL guy with all the tattoos that dates all the what's it? Do you know who I'm talking about?
Pete Davidson.
He dated, like Pete Davidson. Like I'm not a big Pete Davidson fan. Nick Swartzen would be good too.
Oh yeah.
I think Nick Swartzen would be good.
So you'd have a group of people that are like figuring out how to establish settlement and how to build that settlement up, and they got to deal with their population and making sure they have enough food and shit like that. And they're building roads, and I think you do ships and stuff like that, because I think there's seafarers of Catan and stuff like that. But see, that's the thing, is there's so many different styles of that board game. Is you could make a whole franchise out of it. You could have Settlers of Catan, where you set it as like a Western kind of thing, or not even a Western thing, as like a medieval times kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or there's Seafarers of Catan, so everybody's out and they're sailing the ocean, and you do it like that one show that's on HBO Max. Yeah. Our Flag Means Death. Yes.
Speaking of him, have you seen any of Reservoir? I don't think they call it Reservoir Dogs or
Reservation Dogs.
Reservation Dogs. Have you seen any of that?
It's not bad.
I've seen some of the funny spots on like YouTube and stuff. Like I want to watch it. That show looks hilarious. And another Taika Waititi. What's his name? Taika Waititi. Yeah, Taika Waititi. Is he?
I think I only watched like the first 4 or 5 episodes. I think I need to go back. I need to go back to that. It wasn't bad. I feel like everything that guy touches is fucking like hilarious to me. Our Flag Means Death was really funny.
I've watched a couple episodes.
Pretty good. What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, when I saw that couple of those and I saw his name attached to it, I was like, okay. So he's got another thing that's really good.
Spacefarers of Catan. There's a Spacefarers of Catan where they're out in outer space. You do that like Spaceballs.
Oh yeah, you know what? This could be a good TV series. You do it like TBS has that it's the same cast of characters, but they put them in different things. Like they're medieval first, or like it was like Steve Buscemi was in it, and he plays God in one.
Yeah.
And then in the next one, they're like settlers kind of thing. I think.
I'm into watching the show. I can't remember what it was called. I don't remember what it was called. I know exactly what you're talking about though. It was on TBS. Steve Buscemi was in it. Was Daniel Radcliffe in that show?
Yeah. I thought somebody else was in it. I'm trying to see if I can look it up real quick. Miracle Workers.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you could totally Miracle Workers this.
Exactly. Oh my God, you're right. You just do it. It basically be that show. You just set it to a board game and call it Settlers of Catan.
Yeah. Well, and that's it's very common now. Like, American Horror Story does it, but there's a lot of like the single season shows that use the same characters, like the same actors and actresses for each season, but they're different.
Which I kind of like. It gives it like a very like ensemble play kind of feel.
Yeah, it's probably smart from like a financial standpoint too, because like it never grows stale because it's not like you're telling the same story every year. It's a different setting, but then like the characters kind of grow together as a team. And then if it's like, well, this person wants too much money or like they're not really into it anymore, you can kind of take them out, plug somebody else in, and keep going. Yeah, I mean, like American Horror Story has been going on for like 15 years at this point.
I know. So. I don't know how many varieties of Settlers of Catan there are. Settlers of Catan.
Welcome to the world of Catan.
Because, like I said, I know there's Settlers of Catan. There's
I got a card
Spacefarers of Catan. There's Seafarers of
Dawn
Catan.
of Humankind. They got a Game of Thrones, Rise of the Incas, Starfarers, Family Edition, Settlers of America.
Yeah, you just do but yeah, exactly. Like you said, like, oh my God, like I didn't think about doing it like that Miracle Worker show. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. That'd be a good idea.
Have it all over the place. One season's in space and one season's out west and one season's in medieval times. And
what you'd have to come up with some kind of like saying too that happens, like their version of like oh fuck, what's Star Wars? Why can't I think this?
I got a bad feeling about this.
Yeah, something like that. Like I got a bad feeling about this, but your version of it.
Yeah. But you could totally do it as a comedy. Could be the place. You just have like, you find a decent enough cast and just say, go out there and fuck around and be funny.
Yeah, build a house, build a boat, fish, spearfish, build a
spaceship,
shark, alligator, crocodile. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. Like it's basically like the same kind of spots in each movie or each show. It's just kind of a different environment, and yeah, I like this idea. Oh no, Raiders! Oh no, pirates! See, it all plays.
Mm-hmm. All genres.
Oh, and like if you did Pirates and Raiders, like whoever plays the pirates in the one movie or series plays the Raiders in the other one.
Now that we're talking, like in my head, I was thinking like, you could do it as like a gritty, realistic, like, like almost like a Game of Thrones kind of thing. Cause you have all these rival settlements, like against each other. Cause that's the whole point of the game is you want your settlement to do better than all the other settlements, which is essentially what fucking Game of Thrones is. Right. So, like, I was thinking, like, if you do it in, like, a serious drama kind of way, then you could go that route, be like, whose settlement is the best? You do it as, like, a, gritty, like, survival kind of movie, like, that fucking, like, Leonardo DiCaprio and the Bear.
Yeah, Revenant.
You do it like that. But actually, now that we're talking, like I can only picture this as a comedy now.
Yeah, and if you did multiple settlements, I like one episode would take place like from the point of view of the one settlement, and they're like, the other ones over there are fucking assholes. And you go to the other one, it's like the exact. But you go to the other one, they're doing the exact same things, but they just hate the other one because they're not like in their group, and they're like, those guys are fucking assholes.
Yeah, let's take what you learn
And what you learn in the end is they're just all the same. You have some laughs, wholesome kind of feel-good moments at the end.
Yeah. And then you got a robber who's constantly trying to rob things. Oh my God, he'd be like Swiper the Fox and Dora the Explorer. Like he'd constantly be trying to steal shit, but he'd always fuck up.
Yeah, I do want him to mess up. Like he'd mess up
all the time and then get kicked out and have to go to another settlement.
Yeah, and when he messes up, like he messes up them and he feels bad about it. Like he's just not he's a robber with like morals, if that makes sense.
Like a stupid Robin Hood.
Oh, and you do your Christmas special where he goes to rob something and they give him like a pie instead.
Ooh.
Yeah. Like I said, feel good moments. That's what all comedies need. They need that, like, you laugh at it, but then in the end you learn something. You learn something about the show and yourself.
You need that grounding, those grounding moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like those.
So that was my big idea with Settlers of Catan. Because like I said, I feel like you could go all kinds of different directions. You go all kinds of different directions. You could kind of do all kinds of different genres. But now, like I said, now the more we've been talking, I'm like, no, I feel like this is a comedy and nothing else. I only picture this as a comedy.
Yeah, I think that's the best way for it. All right, so my first one that I have is I played it on the computer, but I was a huge Game of Life fan. Did you ever play Game of Life?
I did play the Game of Life.
And it was one of those games. It was like, do you want to go to college? Do you not want to go to college? And then you land on things like, hey, you've got a kid. Then you land on another one. He's like, you got another kid.
How many kids did you usually end up with when you played the Game of Life?
I don't remember.
For some reason,
exactly.
I always ended up with like 4 or 5.
I think I always had like 2 at most. My sister, I think one time she had like, it was on an actual board, and she had so many kids that they were falling off the back. Because I think they only put like 3 spots back there. But what I want, so with this movie, like I'm big on like board games. Like I feel like Jumanji style, like but the reverse, where you get sucked into the game because I always feel like you kind of learn something from that. So my game of life, what happens is there's a kid. He's like, I don't know if I've told you, Richard, recently, but like my kid said he wanted to run away. He's 6. He was mad because we didn't have ice cream at 8:00 at night before bed. So he's like, "Screw you guys! I'm running away."
What? Okay, so like sidetrack here. What did you do when your kid said he wanted to run away?
So it was right at dusk. Like we had maybe 25 or 30 minutes left of light. It was like going down. And I was inside and he said something really mean to me. So I was like, dude, I'm going outside and going to like clean up the yard or whatever. And when I came back in about a half hour later, Tiffany was like, yeah, your son's got his bag packed. He's running away. And I was like, oh, okay. So I walked over. I'm like, so you're running away, huh, bud? He's like, yep, got my bag packed. I'm like, cool. What do you got? He's like, well, I got my stuffies, got my Pokemon cards, I got a bottle of water. I was like, okay. So we go outside and the sun's going down. I'm like, well, you better get going. It's going to get dark soon. There's a bobcat out there. He's like, don't worry, Dad. I got my knife. He had his big Power Ranger knife. And I was like, well, I don't think that's going to work, bud. But all right. And I was like, well, yesterday we went and bought chips and stuff for our movie night that we had together. And that's pretty much gone. And that cost like $20. I was like, so what are you going to do for food? And he's like, I got money. Like, how much do you have? He's like, I got like $60. It's like, all right, well, that's about 3 days worth of food. He's like, yeah, and I know where the grocery store is. And he pointed where he thought the grocery store was. I was like, well, it's over that way, but close.
And then you pointed in the complete opposite direction.
Yeah. And he kept kind of ho-humming around. And I was like, well, you better get going. And like, it got pretty dark and it was like, well, he's like, well, I'm not going to run away tonight. I was like, okay. I was like, so since you want to run away, you're going to sleep in your room tonight, right? He's like, well, I'll sleep in your guys' room.
I remember my oldest was the I'm going to run away. And I was like, you know what? Go ahead, pack a bag. And they packed a bag. And I was like, all right. Now, I will say that they did make the mistake. I don't know why, but it seems like kids make the mistake of running away when it's cold.
Yeah.
So they're like, all right, I'm leaving. I'm like, okay. And so they walk out the door and I'm watching them and they're walking up. They walk up in front of the house. They get to the sidewalk and they look one way and they look the other way. They walk like up the sidewalk about maybe 2 houses and then come back and then go down the other way about 2 houses and then come back. And they go back and forth like this for like probably another 10 minutes. And then there's a knock at the door and I open it up and she's like, I want to come home.
And you're like, who are you? I've missed you so much.
I said, you've already been replaced. And I slammed the door in her face.
Yeah. After that day, he hasn't really talked much about wanting to run away. So
yeah. It's funny how that works.
But so that got me thinking like this game of life. So it's kind of the same thing. Like a kid's like, I'm going to run away. And somehow magically they get transported to the game of life. And at first it's fun. It's like, hey, do you want like, you'll get a job with money or you can go to college. You're like, this is great.
That's always the first thing. Like, okay, so when you play the game of life, what do you usually pick? Do you usually pick the job or do you pick college?
I think I always pick college.
I always pick college as well.
Yeah, because it gave you 3 occupational choices, and I think it gave you 3 salary options too. Whereas if you just went with a job, you got 1 occupation and 1 salary. So it's kind of a you had to be lucky.
If I remember, I think that like the no job, you basically like you picked 3 random things, but you picked one of 3 random things, and it was kind of like a crapshoot whether you ended up better off, but the odds were pretty much not in your favor
if you didn't go to college.
If you didn't go, in terms of making like a decent buck,
Yeah,
because the thing was like with the college thing was always like you picked to go to college and then you had to like, pay so much. You had to pay. So you started out with less money to begin with, but you had more earning potential.
Something like that, yeah. You started more in debt. But I think the one time I didn't, so I'm trying to remember back when I played, I think there was a time my sister didn't go to college and she got like an okay job, but she got like $100,000 a year salary.
Uh-huh.
And I went to college and got like everything under like 20 grand a year. So like from the get-go, I was screwed.
Yeah.
And so I think when I was like, well, you don't need to go to college, so I didn't go to college. And then I got like the same result, like a crappy job and no money. But from like I've talked about Candyland, and my sister stacked the deck in Candyland, so I wouldn't doubt that she stacked the deck in Game of Life. But yeah, I kind of want to go off like this kid. He is like, I want to be an adult. I want to run away, and he gets transported to the Game of Life world. Kind of like Big, yeah.
Yeah.
So he gets there and he's instantly older and he's like, this is great. Like, I can get a job, I got money. And then all of a sudden, like, he's got to get married. And you just go down the Game of Life path, right? And, like, maybe like he gets a glimpse of like the parents in and out, but he doesn't get to see them much. Because, I mean, like, I think about this too as I get older. Like, you see less and less of your parents.
Yes.
And, like, I'm sure like with your kids too, like when they go to grandma and grandpa's or they're away for like even a day, when they come back, like they absolutely miss you. Like you'd be together for 7 straight days and they're, little terrors or you're a terror. But then when they're gone for a day and come back, they're the sweetest little things ever.
I mean, maybe. I don't know.
Mine has anyway, but again, he's still under 7. Good. So there was what day was it?
I think when my kids are my kids are old. Like my youngest is 15, so like when they're shitty, they're just shitty.
Yeah, I mean at that point they're just adults. So
right,
you don't get to like you're like, hey, why don't you come sit on my lap? They're like, no, that's weird. Why is it weird? Because I'm 16. Oh yeah, that is weird.
Yeah. Oh shit, it is weird. Forget that I asked. Don't tell anybody that I asked.
Knock at the door.
What are you posting?
What are the police doing here?
Who'd you call?
So tying to this, so this is where like the comedy is going to be like, the kid getting into situations. Maybe you could cast like Tom Hanks' kid in this. I think he might be a little too old now. But if you could get him like 10 years ago, that would be a good fit.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, where was I going with that? Because the other thing I think about too is like, I've been sticking this comment in my head a lot. Is like, they talk about like there was a time where you left your friends from playing, and it was the last time you ever played, and nobody realized it or knew it.
Yeah,
and like I think about that with like there's going to be the last time that like you hold your kid's hand or you carry your kid or something like you said, like there's going to be a time where he's like the last time he sits on my lap.
Yeah.
And we're not going to realize that. And so I think this movie would kind of play into that. And so this kid would kind of realize like, oh God, like it is kind of cool to be a kid. And I do love my parents and I don't want to run away. And, being an adult sucks ass.
Being an adult blows.
Yeah, because that's kind of the moral of Big.
Because the whole big things with the Game of Life, it was always get a job, which I think at one point, like midway through the game, you had the option to go back to college or go like if you didn't, you could go, and if you went, you could go back.
Yeah, there was something like that. There's also
like the other big thing I think was always buying houses. Like you started out with like a small house and then you went to a bigger house.
Because you had to land on certain things or you got past certain spots on the board. And yeah, like you could either go back to school or you could change your career. There's spots where you could get fired.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, buying a house. They had like you could land on things where it's like, oh, guess what? Your basement's leaking. And again, like as a kid, if the basement leaks, you're like, well, that sucks. But, I just won't go downstairs. But as an adult, you're like, well, I got to get this fixed.
Hey, Dad, the basement's wet.
No.
And they just go, hey, Dad, the basement's wet. And to them, they're like, okay, well, the basement's wet, whatever. I just won't go down there. But then, like, the problem you hear that, and then all you want to do is shoot yourself in the face.
Well, what happens is they come up crying. You're like, what's wrong? It's like, oh, my toys are ruined. It's like, well, you better take better care of them. Well, it's not that. What is it? They're all wet. What? You go down. You're like, oh, fuck. You're like, yeah, I know. All my toys are ruined. No, not that. But so.
And then your wife's like, honey, why is there no hot water? And then you're like, son of a bitch.
Yeah. Now, we could just burn this place down and collect the insurance money.
Yeah. Was
that's
that ever an option in the game of life? I don't remember that square.
Tax fraud and insurance fraud were not an option. So at what point, I've wondered this because, like, I feel like, when you're not a parent, it's like pretty easy to be like, well, yeah, I mean, obviously your kid's 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever it is, like, of course you're not going to hold their hand because they're a big kid. But as a father now, like, my son still seems like young, like holding his hand isn't a big deal. But at what age do your kids get? Maybe I don't know if with you, but like where you're just like, oh, they're not really a kid anymore.
I don't know. I want to say it's around 12, like 12 to 13 is when they kind of like. I guess like not really so much where they start testing you, but probably where they start like trying to assert their own identity.
Yeah,
because that's when they're putting it together.
Yeah, because 12, like you say 12, like that seems like a kid, and 13 feels like a freshman, where it's like, oh yeah, you're a teenager, but you're like, it's like a freshman in high school. And then it's like all of a sudden they're 15.
Like that's when they start going on like kind of like wild swings in terms of like personality traits, things that you would not expect or anticipate. But it's just them like, I don't know. I feel like for the way I've always like handled it is, like express yourself however you want, and whatever. Like I'm totally supportive on what path you want to take life wise, and maybe but understand that like the path isn't a straight line. Like maybe it weaves back into another thing, and like they're gonna do crazy shit.
Yeah, but they can't be 6 forever, which is kind of where I'm at. Where I wish they could be 6 forever.
Yeah. Yeah, they're gonna do weird kind of like things that you might find odd, but maybe that'll stick, and maybe that'll be part of their core identity, or maybe it won't, and they'll do something different. Like you don't know.
Yeah, I always think it's just weird. Like you think of like, I've never thought of myself as a kid. Like, I don't think any kid really thinks of themselves as a kid. You're just like, you're a person kind of thing, like figuring stuff out.
As an adult, do you think of yourself as, like, you don't think of yourself at the age you are. You think of yourself at like in my head, like I'm 27.
Yeah. Well, and like I look at my dad and stuff, and it's like, well, he's the adult. My dad's the adult.
Exactly.
But from his perspective, at some point, he's like, shit, that's not a kid anymore. Like, that's a grown-ass man. Well, he doesn't say grown-ass man. He's like, that guy's not, he's kind of a big boy at this point.
Why can't he be a grown-ass man?
Because you made him just hold the flashlight, John.
Well, he would have fucked it up, Laura.
I told him lefty-righty, and he still doesn't get it.
I told him lefty-loosey, and he started to do a dance.
I mean, it was a good dance, but still.
Means, Laura. I don't know how to tarantella.
I don't do the ticky-talks. But yeah, I mean, like, he probably doesn't see me as an adult, or he sees me as an adult, but like to me, he's still like, the father figure. He's the adult in the room. And I just wonder at like what point, like where he realized like, although the last time we hung out, he did try to hold my hand.
Well, and also like when they get older, then I mean, there are some things that you kind of have to like, at least from what I've learned, it seems like some things you kind of have to like force it where you're like, hey, you know, you're X years old. Like it's time to like, you want to deal with grown up stuff. Well, this is grown up stuff.
You know, I feel like in this movie too. Did you ever watch Click with Adam Sandler?
I did. And I remember it. I don't remember all of it, but I do remember it being very sad.
I bawl my eyes out at the end of that movie. It's like it's an Adam Sandler comedy movie, and I feel like this would be it. This would kind of fall into that boat where it's like a lot of laughs.
I think you're
because
right.
the game of life, the idea is like you go through all this stuff, and where do you end up? You end up in a retirement home at the end of your life. And if somebody kind of had that like sped
you could do
through,
a light click where instead of a remote, he'd have the little spinner thing in his in his pocket.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. Click, click. Oh, hey, look, I'm here. I got my cool job. Well, if I go a little bit, if I roll a 10 here, I get to go get my promotion. Click, click. Oh, shit, I landed one too far. The basement's flooded. Yeah, that movie, that maybe makes me cry.
But you're right. At the end of the game of life is you're supposed to, you pull into this retirement home and you sell off the house, whatever house you had, you sell that off.
You look at all the assets you have and you say, all right, well, do we get to go to one of these 3 different?
Isn't that one of the things where the kids actually count like in the plus column? Like the more like you get like $100 for each kid or something.
Maybe they do add a little bit. Although in the end, I don't think because I think if you land on certain things, depending on how many kids you have, it costs you extra.
Yeah, it's like pay $25 for each child or something like that.
Because I don't want to do this math for you, Richard, but you have 3 kids and I have 1 kid, and I'm pretty sure you've spent way more on kids than I have.
Don't remind me.
But think of it this way, Richard. When you get to the end of your life, you have 3 kids that can take care of you. More than one of them is going to like you. I mean, you've got a 1 in 3 chance, or at least like you only need one of the 3. I've got to have one of the 1 be like, yeah, Dad, I'll take care of you.
Yeah. Probably should have been a bit nicer to him when he was trying to run away.
I know, right? He's going to remember that.
I can give you a ride somewhere if you want. You want to go to the bus station?
That's what he's going to say. Dad, I give you a ride somewhere. What do you do with my wheelchair in this pond? Splash.
Yeah. It's time for you to run away, Dad. Wait, what?
But my legs don't work.
Game of Life got dark.
It did. All right. What would you have for your other one?
So for the other one, I'm not like I said, I'm a bit shaky on this one. But I was thinking about the game, which I don't know if you've ever played this game. It's a board game. Kind of works like Settlers of Catan, but it's called Ticket to Ride.
Is that the train one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've played it.
I was thinking about if you do something like Ticket to Ride and you do it like a big heist movie.
Okay. Could you do like a Cannonball Run with that type thing too?
You could. And everybody, because it's all about building. So they're all trying to build the longest track.
Yeah. That's a game. That's kind of like Monopoly. Like they say Monopoly is how you lose friends. Like that Ticket to Ride game is how you lose friends. When you're like building your track and somebody puts like 1 to block yours. You're like, you motherfucker.
Yeah.
I suck at those games.
Because that's on purpose. Like with Monopoly, it's usually like, you roll the dice and you land on a bad spot. And, whatever, and what happens. But with Ticket to Ride, like somebody blocks your track, like they did it on purpose. Yeah. They did it deliberately to fuck with you.
And those games are not good if you're like a planner like me. Like I've got like, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this and this, and it'll be the greatest thing ever.
Yep. And somebody comes along, one thing happens, and then somebody puts one thing down, and you're like,
That was going to be mine in 3 moves, and it's like, well, sucks to be you. Well, you can't join anything else to it. Yeah, I know. No, you can't either.
Yeah, that's how you flip a board.
Bitch. Yeah,
that's how you get a board flip.
That's how you get.
Place. I'm running away.
Like, you don't even live here. And in fact, don't come back. We don't want you at game day.
And put my life spinner back.
That's okay. I'm going to go back to the JFK Jr. reunion spot. He's going to show up in a couple days. Fucking assholes.
This is because the guys on the podcast told me so. Unless something happens, which seems like it happens a lot.
Does he know JFK Jr.'s dead? Yeah, but he thinks he's coming back. Like Jesus? Kinda.
Speaking of games, this is another weird sidebar, but apparently there is a game coming out it's a video game in 2023. It's a VR game where you are literally Jesus.
Seems blasphemous.
And you're doing you walk around and you put your hand on stuff, and you put your hand on a barrel and it fills full of fish, and you put your hand on another barrel and you do the water to wine, and you bring people back from the dead and blah, blah, blah. But I guess I'm just asking, what would be the appeal of that game?
I think because I would think that
I would think it's probably going to be a very on the rails experience.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to deviate a lot in terms of what you're able to do.
I could see it being useful in terms of if you're trying to do a biblical study type thing, where you kind of get to visually see the stuff that's in the Bible. And also, that would make sense.
If you want to play it and then somebody's like, spoilers, he dies.
Hey, look, it's a cross on Mama's house. Carry it.
What are all those plus signs on the hill for? You'll find out in Act 3.
Guess what? New DLC coming out next month. Oh, look, an Easter DLC. I wonder what that's about. That's where he rises, Richard.
I'm not going to buy that one. I'm going to buy the one that's Good Friday, because how can anything bad happen on Good Friday?
But no, I like a cannonball run idea. You get a group of people together trying to build the longest track. The good, what I like about those two is if you had people that played it a lot, you'd figure out the tropes and you could build those in the game. Like you said, all of a sudden you're building your track, your group's building the track, and all of a sudden this other team just has a random track right in the way.
Yeah.
You're but we were going to build there. You were?
Sorry about it.
Not now.
And then they have a big cigar hanging out of their mouth. They're sorry about it. You snooze, you lose.
I'd say go around, but that's not part of the rules. And they all have those old train whistles.
Yeah.
I like this idea.
And they all have monocles and top hats.
Yeah. Hey, did you know it's a Mandela effect that the Monopoly guy doesn't have a monocle?
Oh God, I guess you're right.
Yeah. I watched a thing. So when I was on Facebook, I clicked a link to a YouTube video about JFK Jr. coming back. And after a couple hours of watching that, I didn't watch that. There was this guy who talked about the simulation theory, and he talked about how the Mandela effect is the glitch in the Matrix kind of thing.
Yeah,
and he talked about the Monopoly guy. Yeah, deja vu is kind of correcting itself too.
Yeah, like deja vu.
Yeah, it's correcting itself.
Yeah, like deja vu.
The other thing that was interesting.
Sometimes it takes 3.
They talked about how people are trying to say well, we can't be in a simulation because it would take so much computing power to compute everything in the universe. And they said, well, no, because in video games, only what you see is rendered. So like when you look way out and you see a building, like that whole building's not rendered. What's in it's not rendered. It's not until you get closer and closer stuff starts rendering. And apparently I didn't fully understand this experiment, but it was kind of interesting. There is this.
And also like if you look at things that are like procedurally generated, like you look, okay, like No Man's Sky, for example, that's an entire universe. That's, planets and galaxies and stars and planets with individual islands and trees and animals and fish and all that's procedurally generated. There's literally, thousands of planets and biomes and islands and rocks and minerals and trees and fish and birds and
so this experiment that they did to kind of prove that, so they would put photons through a slit and they expect some kind of pattern on the side. And if they were watching on the other side of the slit, it did like this more complex wave. But if they didn't watch it, that wave didn't happen. And so they're like, well, that's weird. And so they put like an eye, like a camera to watch it. And when the camera was on, these waves happened like they'd expected. I'm like, well, this is kind of weird. Because basically it was like getting shot against a wall. So they could tell the pattern hit the wall.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, what happens if we just unplug this eye? So they started it and unplugged the eye that was watching it. And it acted as if it was doing it correctly because it thought something was watching it. I'll have to find the video. Like, I'm not doing it justice at all, but it was basically like when something was visibly watching the other side of this, it acted as expected. But when something wasn't watching it, it would act like less, what could be considered less computing power.
Is that how we end Ticket to Ride? Is we find out that the whole thing's just a simulation?
Oh, I like that. Yeah. You get to the end and it's just like you're back at the beginning, but you're like, we went across country. Did you? Did you really?
I mean, you saw the mountain.
Yeah. But did you really see the mountain? All right. So for my last one, like I talked about, my sister and I played a shit ton of Candyland. And I love getting transported into like the games.
So this was the first one that you are like, hey, I think I have this funny idea for Candyland. And that's what kind of like set me off. I was like, okay, like this could be interesting. So this is the one I was kind of like wanting to hear. Like, what do you have for Candyland?
So I feel like this would be like, it's like estranged brother and sister. Like, they like, not like bad, but just like, when people grow up, like the patriarchy, family member passes away and the family kind of dissolves. And like the same thing happens here. Like, oh, last living, mom or dad passed away and you got to go back to the house. They hadn't been back in a while. And you're going through all the stuff and all of a sudden they find the game Candyland and they're like, you take it. No, you take it. And it's like, something happens, the electricity, they both get electrocuted and they get transferred into Candyland. And so through the whole thing, they're going all the way through the Candyland stuff. And at first, of course, they're kind of competing against each other. It was like, well, you're going to get the grumpy grape because I stack the deck. Because that's what your sister does, Richard, whenever they play Candyland. They stack the deck, so you get the grumpy grape. But, you go through the different little worlds. They got to team up, work together, go against all the stuff, all the way to get to the end. And I think that's where, like, I don't know if you would say it's like a heavenly thing, but that's where you get like this was something that like the parents like somehow set up in a way for the kids to like reconnect. And it's very much kind of like a Jumanji thing. I think would be cool is if at the end they could kind of like flash back to when they were kids. So that way they kind of know a little bit what happens, but they can kind of, because it was like, that's something else that kind of like, I mean, all my stuff kind of ties into like a family idea, but like Jumanji, it was this whole thing like this kid gets taken away. He lives in a jungle for 20 years and his parents don't know what happens to him. And, he didn't get to be with his parents, but he kind of got that second opportunity. And I feel like that's what you would get here. Like, whatever point in time where the
end of Jumanji, like he ends up back as a kid or in his kid body, but he retained all the memories of being not a kid.
Which is, so going back to our Big statement, like that one chick had sex with Tom Hanks' character as Big, but he was really like a 12-year-old kid.
Right.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. Well, and also kind of illegal. I mean, not, but it is, but it's not.
Yeah. Well, the illegal part's when she like kind of comes back and realizes it, and she's like, "Hey, in like 6 years, come find me."
Yeah.
That's kind of weird. That's the weird part.
I mean, that's kind of illegal.
Yeah. It's definitely frowned upon because that's what you would say is grooming.
Man, Candyland got dark.
Yeah, I know, right? I was watching it was this conspiracy when they're talking about Dane Cook, and he said something like, because I guess the woman he's married to, she's like 19 now, but apparently like she hung out at his house when she was like 14 or 15, and he's like, Dane Cook, yada yada. Here's the story, and we're trying to figure out if he's the G word. I didn't know what the G word was. And apparently they're saying that he was grooming her to be his. Because I was like, well, that's not a big deal. But now I'm thinking back on Big. I'm like, it's kind of a big deal.
Dane Cook's one of those celebrities that like you'll read about that he's dead, and then you'll be like, oh yeah, Dane Cook.
Yeah. He was a thing for a minute and disappeared. Yeah. He was in that movie, Mr. Brooks. Like that was like his first big movie. About serial killer, Dance with Wolves guy, Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
Great movie. I need to rewatch it. He wasn't very good in it, but that movie itself, really good.
The only movie I ever liked him in was Waiting. And I think he had all of like 3 lines in that movie.
Yeah, he didn't have much. He was kind of, he's the back cook kind of thing. That's another movie I need to rewatch. How do you think it's okay for a kid to watch that? 7, 8? Shawn, your son gave me the
bush in that movie.
Shawn, your son gave me the goat again. Well, he gets to kick you in the ass 12 times.
And it's not even like nice. It's angry. It's an angry bush.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. There is a full-on bush in that movie in there.
Yeah,
and she's got like lint in it.
Yeah.
That's the part that freaked me out the most. It wasn't the bush, it was the fact that there was lint in it.
Yeah.
And then I think when I saw that, I checked my bush and I had lint in it, so I didn't feel as bad. I felt bad for judging, I guess.
I know, but why'd you have to do it in front of me? Let's ask that question.
Yeah, well, we're in the movie theater, and I thought it was dark enough you wouldn't see, but I've never been one to quietly unbuckle my belt.
For fuck's sake.
Yeah. Well, it was awkward that like
you turned and faced me.
Well, it's because you put your hand on my lap. I didn't know what to do.
You grabbed my cheeks with your other hand and made us lock eyes.
Yeah, I said my eyes are up here, asshole. But yeah, my Candyland brother sister kind of reconnecting. Like I said, Jumanji it, where they kind of go back in time and they kind of keep that family together a little bit more. It's all about second chances, is what I think a lot of these movies kind of are.
Yeah. Yours are much more like sweet, wholesome family movies, which I like. I like that.
Well, it seems to make sense for like board game type things. Like that would fit. But
well, especially the ones like Candyland, The Game of Life. I mean, those are family board games.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought about like maybe like a Monopoly one, but like that feels too like tycoon /
It just talks about the evils of capitalism. Yeah. Just don't get me wrong, it is. But I don't need a movie to tell me. I don't need a movie to prove it. I just need to read the paper.
But as we're tidying up our movie pitch, what do you have for some Richard's closing thoughts?
There is always a dark side to a board game, apparently. And while you risk the board games that could tear your family apart, you risk the potential of that for the board game nights that bring your family together.
I like that.
There you go. That's a good wholesome message.
Yeah, you do family game night. I know like 9 times out of 10 they end up with a table getting flipped, but there's that one night where you're like, this was fun.
Yeah, and everybody's having a good time.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me do a little bit of housekeeping. Visit our website, we're languageofbros.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at languageofbro. Email us at bros@languageofbromance.com. And if you want to take that big giant step and join us for our bromance game night, join us like Wendy and Aaron on our Patreon.
They'll always be on our team.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else before I close her out?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, that's all the bromance we have for this show. I'm Shawn.
And I'm Richard.
And remember, don't be a why.
Be a why
not.
Can't wait for you to come back, JFK Jr.
No, we're waiting.
Thanksgiving night. Unless something happens.
Yeah, but we didn't say what Thanksgiving. Or he didn't say what Thanksgiving. That's how he got us.
That's how he got us. Or is it?
Leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when oh my God, it's a song about JFK Jr.